to the Buy Box Bandits podcast.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the Buy Box Bandits podcast. Super thankful for our listeners and watchers on YouTube and other platforms. The past couple episodes, we really appreciate your support. Today, we have a fantastic guest. Matthew Turner is the founder of bearly.art, the #1 craft glue for artisans and creators. Make sure I get that right.
Yes, sir.
on Amazon. So we have another private label expert. We're super excited to hear about kind of what he's gone through the years, dipping his toes in pretty much all the different Amazon business models. So we're very excited to have some of his time here to share some game on what he's got going on Amazon and elsewhere. So Matthew, thanks for joining us tonight.
For sure. Well, thanks for having me on, Miles. I think this is only the second podcast I've done, so appreciate you guys having me on. You know, my goal here is to just bring some value to you guys. I've had a long journey on Amazon. It's been almost 10 years now. I started in college in 2011, so I guess it has been 10 years. The first year wasn't a whole lot going on, but yeah. So I mean, honestly, I'm just here to bring you guys some value, whatever you want to talk about. I started off with $600 flipping cell phones, and I just got really addicted to flipping stuff. I loved it. I'm super ADHD, so like for ADHD people, you're just always looking for that next thing. So like for me, it was no big deal hitting up 100 people on Craigslist. Like, I'll give you $200 for your phone. I'll give you $200 for your phone. I'll give you $200 for, and just drive around, pick up 10 phones. Was like, I loved it. So that's how I got started. And now I have a brand called bearly.art, like you mentioned. And I do want to add the caveat, I am a co-founder. I have an incredible partner that I actually met in college. We're both mechanical engineers. And then we also have like a wholesale business as well. That's like wholesale private label hybrid, where we do about 2 million a year in that business. It's still a little bit bigger than our brand, but next year the brand is going to blow past it. But yeah, so honestly, I could talk about anything in between. I've pretty much done everything except RAOA.
Here, so you had mentioned you had done arbitrage, but not specifically RAO. It's interesting to hear about you selling cell phones on Amazon. So you want to take us back to really the beginning, how you found Amazon and maybe those first couple years, just getting everything in. Because I assume, 10, 8, 9 years ago, it was way harder to learn because, YouTube and these different platforms weren't as big. So how did you learn? I'm sure it was a lot of trial and error, but what was all those first few years like?
Yeah, there was nothing in the beginning. And, honestly, like I met a friend in college, and he was flipping phones. And when I first met him, I asked him like what he did for money, and he was kind of weird about it, and he didn't really give me an answer, which made me really curious. So I kept bugging him about it, and he was like, "Oh, I flip phones," and I was like, and this was 2011, so it was like iPhone 4.
And those broke like crazy too. Those were the ones you like
Dude.
Looked at them and they broke.
Yeah. Dude, yes. Oh my gosh. I personally have repaired probably 1,000 iPhone 4s, 4Ss, because I taught myself how to fix them because of that reason. And anyway, so he told me he flipped phones. I was like, that's genius. Everybody wants a phone. Like Apple was just exploding. There was more demand than supply. And he just kind of became an official mentor. He's actually 4 years younger than me. I think I was 22, 23, and he was 18 or 19. And so I would just bug him and just learn little tactics. But the biggest thing was I just started doing it, because it's exact same thing you mentioned earlier, where people come to you all the time and they're like, "Oh, I learned how to sell on Amazon." And I'm like,
"Yeah, teach me how to sell on Amazon." Yeah,
I'm like, okay, make an account, spend 1 hour doing research, go buy something and list it, and then we can talk. Because until you do that, like, it's just noise. And so he had experienced that with so many people. And when I was actually started doing it, I was like, "Hey man, I bought 3 phones for like $600. I'm going to sell them on eBay now." He was probably like, "Oh wow, I'll actually, talk to this guy and take him seriously." And so I just kind of started, I did nothing but phones for probably 2 years. I had no concept. I was still very much, okay. So one of the key points is that like business is like, at least Tony Robbins says this all the time, business is at least 70% psychological. And at this time, I was still stuck in the mindset of like, I've got to get a college degree and get a good job. This was very much a side thing for me at the time. So I wasn't looking for people doing it. I was afraid of telling people about it because they would judge me or steal my idea. I had all these weird limiting beliefs that are just not true, but I didn't know any better at the time. So yeah, I just kept flipping phones. And by the time I saved up maybe like 5-10,000, I started making some connections with like some local stores. So then I started buying things in bulk from them. I had a local guy that taught me how to fix phones. He had a shop. I would go, at first it started off like, I would go see him and be like, hey man, I have 10 phones. Can you give me a deal on fixing them? And he was like, yeah. So he gave me a deal. And then like he got too slow and I didn't want to wait for him to do it. It's like, hey, if I give you $100, will you teach me how to do it? So it was this whole journey. Like I said, this is me ranting, but you can feel free to stop me.
No, it's all right. Where, what
So-
platform were you selling the phones on after they were being fixed?
So in the beginning, it was eBay. And then probably 2012, I started flipping stuff in 2011. 2012, I think, is when I started on Amazon. And back then, I did stuff that was completely against terms of service, and I had no idea. Like
Yeah.
I was buying UPCs on eBay and making listings. Like that, you're not supposed to do that.
Yeah.
But like I could make a listing for a phone and list it as used, and it would sell immediately. Like,
And this was on Amazon.
yeah.
So
There was-
continue.
I was just gonna say there was no like the limiting factor was cash flow and the amount of time it takes to pay them. So like I could spend, in the very beginning, I could spend all my money in like 2 days, and I could sell it all the next day and then have to wait 2 weeks to get it back.
So what I was going to say was, back in 2012, I don't think many people knew selling on Amazon was even possible. So did you find out about that through your mentor, or was that something you just stumbled upon?
I think I had an issue with eBay where they had suspended my account for a period of time, and I was looking for somewhere else to sell stuff. And that's how it happened. And then I realized Amazon was better. You could list stuff for higher prices.
Even back
yeah,
in 2012, Amazon was better, still better.
Well, I mean, that's just something we don't
Funny.
hear very often, right? Most of the people in our community and that people that we interact with, when we ask them how long they've been selling, 2 years, 3 years,
Yeah.
8 months, 12 months. But like to hear that sort of longevity is super impressive. And
Yeah.
that kind of leads me into my question in terms of like, how different is the platform now than it was then?
Oh man,
Yeah.
there's been like seismic shifts at different stages, right? So like what I started off doing, flipping used, and so in the very beginning, it was like local arbitrage for 2 years. I didn't buy from any businesses for 2 years. This was just literally off the street in Dallas, Fort Worth.
And all cell phones, right?
All cell phones for the first 2 years, nothing else. You cannot do that anymore.
Yeah.
Amazon has gated that entire category. It's very difficult to get ungated for those name brands. Like Samsung is not friendly to resellers at all. I actually got like my first business is basically dead. That's I have a whole crazy suspension story from 2018. My first company, the electronics company, I grew it to like about $1.5 million a year. I think I did $1.5 million in 2017 and like $1.8 million in 2018. But I got suspended because I sold a Samsung product on the wrong listing, and I ended up like getting in big trouble with Amazon, and I had some other things going on too, and they shut the whole account down. And I got hard blocked from Samsung. They like gated the entire brand, and that was like 30% of what I sold. So some of the things that I did, I would not recommend anyone do now.
Right.
Like it started off like the streets arbitrage, and then it turned to wholesale arbitrage. And when I say wholesale arbitrage, like I would buy from any business. Once I filed for my LLC in probably 2015, I had like an actual company. I would buy from any commercial business that had an address in the USA, like a physical presence, and they would give me an invoice and like put the exact item on it. Because in my mind, I was like, okay, they're a business with a physical presence and they're putting this on invoice for me. if Amazon accepts the invoice, it must be good. That's not true either. There's lots of gray market wholesale suppliers that Amazon doesn't like. And
yeah.
I had no concept of these things. It was just, oh no, I'm suspended. What happened? And try to figure it out. Like that was how I learned.
So can you kind of take us through the transition of selling cell phones to obviously coming up with the glue brand that you have today? What was that transition like? What was that process like? How'd you find it and how'd you build it?
Yeah. So 2016 was really the year that I started, like, because I think that was the year I graduated college. That was the year I started thinking more like, wow, I could, because my senior year of college, I was making more money flipping stuff than I was going to as an engineer. And so I was like, why am I getting like it was like, again, the psychological thing. Like I didn't understand business. No one in my family is business. So I started realizing like I could really turn this into a real business. So that's when I started networking and connecting with other business owners and going to trade shows, meeting other business people. When I got to over $1 million a year sales, I joined a group called MDS, which is actually the largest group of Amazon sellers. There's like I think there's almost 500 of us now, and everybody, you have to sell at least $1 million a year to get in the group. So we're like 5 billion in sales a year on Amazon in our group. So I started meeting some of these guys, and some of them are older guys, like in their 30s, like late 30s, early 40s, that like this is not their first go around in business. They just were much sharper. They knew a lot more about business, branding, marketing. So just going to events, having dinner with some of these guys, listening to the conversations about branding and marketing and like the direction of the market, I really just kind of realized like, and based on my own experiences of what was happening 2017 and 2018, there was a lot of friction on Amazon with like seller performance issues. Amazon was battling a lot of bad actors in that time period. And so some of the people that like me and others that we weren't bad actors, but we were maybe selling on some of the same listings. Like you kind of got caught up in the mess to some extent. And so I just was reflecting on this information I was hearing from these other guys, my own experiences, all the problems I was having in the wholesale electronics world. And I kind of just came to the conclusion that like the only things I want to do, like what I want to start building now, I don't want to scale this electronics business. I'm not interested in that. I want to build my own brand and work directly with brands, and like that's it. So like my own manufacturing, build my own brand, and work directly with other brands or authorized distributors, and I don't want to do anything else. So in 2017, I co-founded a company with my partner now from college. That's our wholesale business now, where we work like 90% of the companies we work with are the brand themselves. And then we have a couple like authorized distributors that we do buy from because the brand is like so big or foreign that they won't sell to us directly. So that like from that point, that's when I just decided this is what I want to build. And I started phasing out the electronics business. So to answer your question, like succinctly, like I said, I know I rant. Like it was just reflecting on my experiences of what was happening and me selling stuff, the way that I was doing it. Like I said, wholesale arbitrage, going to trade shows and buying from any distributor that'll give me an invoice. Reflecting on that, meeting guys in the industry that were further along than me and just like hanging out and talking business. And people were like super open and transparent when you like are in like having dinner or you go to an event. Like people
Or on
will talk,
Twitter.
Yeah, I think
Totally.
a lot of people in person, like there's not really a lot of, I mean, I guess there are some secrets, but a lot of people are almost open books and they're very willing to share. And I think a lot of
Totally.
that comes back to also because most people, Roman Romer said this, most people just don't act on what you're saying. So it doesn't even really matter. You could give them a whole guide and a whole playbook on how to do this, and they either are too lazy or they just don't want to do it. So it
Or
doesn't really matter.
don't
Yeah.
think it'll actually work.
Yeah,
Totally.
that too.
And Amazon kind of created a unique environment because it was it's an explosive new market. And so like there's a huge segment of people like us, like just young entrepreneurs that just kind of got in and figured it out by doing it. There was no one teaching us. And so this group that I joined is a bunch of people like me, where we all just started, figured it out. And so when we all met each other and got in a room, it was like amazing, because we were like, wow, we all understand each other. And it's kind of like we've been through this hell of figuring out this behemoth machine and how to like make a living on it.
Yeah, we talk about that a lot, the power of networking and going through problems with other people. So how impactful, I know you kind of touched on it already, but like how truly impactful was it having other people going through similar experiences as you and then being able to kind of talk about it with them?
Oh, it's critical. Absolutely critical. Like, I mean, you see my picture here of Jesus, like, I don't believe that we're made to be alone. Like, we're created for relationships. So, the more people you have on your team that care about you and listen to you and support you, the better. Like, it doesn't have to be a lot of people, but having
just a couple,
having like an inner circle of people that like you do life with or you do business with, that you guys talk every day or every week, is absolutely critical. And then like the wider network of like people in your industry that you can kind of just talk with is also super important.
Yeah. So kind of switching some things up, you mentioned team in a sense of like other, business owners that you're friends with and everything. But what does your team look like for your current company? Because I was looking at some of the listings on Amazon of the brand, and I was seeing like 1,500 reviews, 3,000 reviews. And I know how many sales I get flipping stuff on some listings that have that many reviews. So it's beautiful to know how well I hope those listings are doing for you. But what does your team look like? You said you obviously have a co-founder. Are you using any VAs, in-house employees, advertising agencies? Love to learn a little bit about that structure.
Totally. Yeah. So I'm the head of sales and finance. The way we've divided our business up, my partner is in head of marketing and kind of operations. We have, so it's me and him are kind of heads of those departments. And then we have 9 full-time employees and we have 2 part-time employees. So in Texas, in our warehouse here, we have 6 full-time people besides us. So we got a marketing, we have a girl that has a marketing degree from UTA, where me and my partner went, and she's like our marketing assistant, I think is her title. So my partner Jeremy is kind of in charge of all the social media marketing stuff. If you look at our Instagram, it's popping, it's beautiful.
Oh, I haven't checked that out. So you're using other sales channels too? Like I saw you have the website linked in your Twitter bios. Okay, cool.
Yeah, Amazon is probably 60, maybe 70% of our sales.
Okay.
But
wow.
Next year it's going to be less than that.
Oh, I can imagine. Yeah, owning your customer data, retargetability, all those different types of things, very important in that sense. So that's interesting. I didn't expect you to say so many in-house, but that makes sense. So you handle all your own fulfillment, like with the warehouse and everything.
We are the manufacturer. We manufacture this.
Mm-hmm.
So we source all the raw materials ourselves and we put it all together.
Yeah. So how does that work? Sourcing glue and manufacturing glue. I'm very curious.
What are like the first steps in setting up a manufacturing plan and sourcing raw materials? Because I would not know where to start with that.
I mean, honestly, it's just having an idea you're convicted on, that like this is a good idea, and then just figuring it all out. Honestly, that's the simple answer. We didn't know what we were doing. I was very determined that like we want to build a brand. So we spent a lot of time thinking about what niche we would want to go into. And like my partner used to live in an apartment in downtown Dallas. And me and my wife would go over there and we would just have meetings in the early years, and we were just brainstorming like once we were convinced we want to do a brand, it's like, okay, what industry do we want to go into? Why do we want to go into that industry? Just like trying to figure out, okay, who are we as people? What are our strengths? What are our interests? Can we find a way to like pick an industry that we would want to be in for the long term, because him and I are both very much like, we're trying to build an awesome company where people want to work, and where we develop teams and have an awesome environment. So it's a very long-term play. Like, this is not a short-term thing for us. So everything we've done has been the hard way, intentionally.
Right.
Because I think, yeah, I think if you do it the hard way, then it lasts longer.
Right.
From
I
that,
feel like I might be getting off from your question though. Am I getting off from it?
no, you're good. You're good on
Okay.
it. I was gonna
Sorry.
say, from your first meeting you had, how long did it take? Because a lot of people on Amazon, or that are trying to learn how to come into Amazon or the private label space, might think it's quick. Like, coming up with an
Oh,
idea, they might
yeah.
think it's a couple
Yeah.
weeks or even a day. So how long did it take you from those like first meetings to when you landed on like glue, and you were certain you were gonna do glue?
So we were doing the wholesale business for a year before we even started getting into the brand stuff. So let's see. So from when we first had the idea, like, okay, we want to go into arts and crafts, and then we were trying to think of what's the first product we want to do. Like, we basically were trying to reverse engineer, like, what's something we think we can improve, and we can build like a blue ocean. One of the books that I would highly
Oh
recommend is
yeah.
Blue Ocean Strategy. So that book was really strongly in our mind at that time. Like, we wanted to be a big fish in a small pond for our first product. Like, it's very niche. There's a lot of people that do these types of crafts that our product is good for, but it's still very niche. Like I said, this is not something you would buy for a school for a bunch of little kids. But okay, so it probably took from when we had the idea, like, oh, this is the product we're going to do. Then we had to figure, like, our formula is unique to us. We spent about a year working with the chemists to formulate it. Just a bunch of back and forth, like, hired a company, and basically we just went back and forth, like, this is what we wanted to be able to do. Here's what we think might work for that. Can you formulate it? Send us samples, we'll test it. And so we just did that back and forth for probably a year just to get the formula right. And then we ordered our first amount of it in giant. Actually, no, our first orders came in 5-gallon buckets. Our first orders we got in
Oh.
5-gallon buckets.
That's a lot of glue.
That is a lot
Yeah.
of glue.
It's a ton of
Yeah.
glue.
Okay. Well, but now we order in
Yeah.
55-gallon drums though. So we got 4 drums on a pallet coming in.
Crazy.
It's like 2,000 pounds of glue. So we started with 5-gallon buckets of glue, and just like putting them into like a hand pump machine where you just push it and it pumps out some glue. And we were bottling it ourselves, labeling it ourselves. Me and my partner, my wife, we only had 1 employee at the time. We were doing everything. My partner is very good at graphic design as well. He's an artist. He's more of an artist than I am. Part of the reason we have the name bearly.art is because we want to have a marketing spin where it's like, even if you can barely do art, like,
Yeah, I like that. Yeah.
I'm the one that can barely do art. Like, I'm not that great, but I could still make cool stuff with our products. And for some of our future products, we're going to have some marketing opportunities for that. We have one coming out in a few months that will be good for that. Like, you can make really cool stuff and be a dummy like me. Yeah, so it was a year just from the idea. It took a year to develop it, and then it took probably 3 months, 3 to 6 months before it really started taking off. We had a good launch, because we had done like a test group. We went deep into Facebook groups and like found people in the niche and influencers, and we just sent them all a bunch of it. When we had it, we were like, hey, we made this, we think you'll like it because you guys make this stuff, let us know what you think. And we didn't ask them to do anything, but like, everybody shared it, and so just kind of started blowing up in social media, in our little world of hardcore paper crafters.
So
Yeah.
what makes your glue like physically like unique from other craft glues?
Yeah, so the main things are, it is like wrinkle and buckling resistant on the paper. So like,
Okay.
unless you're using way too much of it. So people that are doing, so one of the big things people will make this for is like paper flowers. People make these really elaborate paper flower arrangements. And if the paper is like all wrinkled and crinkled, it's going to look like crap.
Right.
So it's wrinkled, it's resistant to that. It dries clear, so you can use it on colors and anything. It's not going to be white. One of the things that we're better than any of our competitors, I think, is that ours is freeze thaw stable. So like my biggest competitor, they stop shipping in the winter because if there's freezes, it goes bad. Ours can go through multiple freeze thaw cycles and still be stable.
Oh wow, that's huge.
And then we have like a cool precision applications like tip kit. We call it the tip kit that it comes with. So if you go on Amazon, you look up Bearly.art, you'll see like our little tip kit thing. So those are really the main things that like the people that are creating things care about. And it's industrial strength too, so you only need like a teeny tiny amount.
So you knew from the start, and I think you said this, but you knew from the start this was a super long-term play, and you wanted to get it right the first time around.
Yeah. So we put a lot of time and effort into it. Yeah.
That's interesting. I was just taking a look at the Instagram, and it's nice. I mean, it's totally like all contemporary marketing. There's reels on there. Garrett and I love doing the reels for our personal brands. And is a lot of the content on there user generated, or are you guys making stuff on your own and posting it?
It's both. So now we started something this year called a design team. So basically it's curated influencers. We started with 5 and we do a different iteration every quarter. So we're on DT4 now, design team 4. It's basically influencers in our niche. They apply to work with us and we give them a bunch of our products for free. We promote their content and we ask them to make us 2 pieces of content per month in return. So we get 2 pieces of content from our design team each month. And that was 5 people, I think, the first quarter, and then 10 and 10. And then this quarter we have 20 because we had so many applications. It was hard to like pick which ones.
Mm-hmm. And what other platforms besides Instagram? Are you guys doing any like paid Instagram and Facebook ads, any TikTok, stuff like that?
So when we launched, one of my friends had recommended an ad agency called Chapel Digital Media, Chase Chapel. And he's a good guy. He knows the industry well. He's been in it for a while. He sells training courses and stuff too. You'll see him all over. So we had hired them and we worked with them until like a month or 2 ago. I just had to let him go because the results just got so bad.
Yeah, it's tough with iOS 14 and 15.
Yeah. So we were partnered with an ad agency for the first year and a half or so, but my partner Jeremy was telling me the other day, he was going through the ad account and he was like, honestly, I think anything would have worked when we launched because like we were doing so good on the influencer and connecting with our audience. Like any kind of ads would have worked.
Right.
Yeah. So I'd love to hear, and I didn't expect to hear like a lot of really cool like branding psychology stuff from you. Just now kind of talking about really building a community. And clearly, I mean, there's 25,000 followers on Instagram. I assume the Facebook page is big as well. But what are kind of just the things you looked into? So forget the product, but in terms of like the angles you take to market it, who you're looking to sell to, I'd love to learn a little bit more about that.
Sure. Yeah, no, good question. So since the way that we launched this brand, it was really kind of centered around that product, right? That's our main product right now. We don't have a huge selection yet. We really focused on figuring out like what does that customer base value, like what are they interested in, and so we kind of centered our brand around like 4 main values, which is leadership, creativity, generosity, and community. So we kind of see ourselves as a brand as like a facilitator in our community. Like we want to empower and facilitate community amongst our customers and everyone we interact with. So one of the things we did, and also generosity. So one of the things we did to like live that out was, so my wife was a social worker, case manager for several years. And we just have a big passion for like the fostering community, foster kids. So we started an initiative we call Cards for Cubs, which is basically we asked our audience, which a lot of them are card makers, like, hey guys, we want to collect cards, like birthday cards, Christmas cards, encouragement cards for foster kids. You guys make them and send them to us, and we will distribute them to foster kids. And so we do that once a year in March and April. And the first year we did it, we got like 7,000 cards, which was crazy.
That's real. That's
Wow.
more than I expected you to say. That's
Wow.
really neat. Yeah.
Yeah. And I really think it was just because like no one in our niche is doing anything like that. And so people were just really excited to be generous with their time and their efforts. Like, and everybody wants to contribute to something meaningful. So like we see ourselves as a brand, like we want to empower people to contribute to meaningful things. So we collected those, and then the second year we got like 36,000 cards. And so we were like, holy crap, this is a good idea. So we filed a nonprofit for it. And so now we're a nonprofit. And
Oh, wow.
That's awesome.
so we're basically going to turn that, using the cards and giving the foster kids is kind of like our metric, I guess, that because if you're a nonprofit and you want to ask for donations, people want to know like how well you're doing. So we can just be
Yeah,
like,
and where the
well,
money's going. Yeah.
yeah, we'd be like, well, we distributed, X thousand cards this year. People be like, awesome. So that's kind of our metric, but the goal is just like support the foster community. So that has kind of become strongly associated with our brand now. Like we footed the bill for all of that ourselves. We're going to be the biggest donators to it, I'm sure, for a long time. We're not experts at raising money for nonprofits or anything like that. So that's all a new learning thing. But really it just comes down to like values, understanding like what does the person that you're trying to sell your product to, like what do they care about? And then figuring out like how can you serve and empower them in those things so that they can connect and identify with your brand in some way.
Yeah, a lot of the branding guys on Twitter really like to use like kind of the buzzword emotional connection, but like just looking at the Instagram bio, it says like empowering your creativity or something like that. That clearly, speaks to someone who wants to, live a certain way, and being that your product helps solve that shows obvious opportunity there. But that was really cool as well with the nonprofit stuff. And all this stuff I want to see you make into threads on Twitter as well. I look forward to boosting them out a little bit, but it's really cool stuff. I think a lot of people will really enjoy to learn from them, might not end up making their way to this episode.
Yeah, so I have a question, kind of switching gears and kind of taking it back to Amazon and business, right? So obviously we all sell on Amazon, being the biggest platform. What was that decision like to start taking your business off of Amazon? How far into selling did you kind of make that decision, and what went into the decision?
Yeah. It really just comes, for me, it just came back to kind of that realization of like the way that, and I don't want to discourage you guys, but I feel like the arbitrage game is like, it's not really what Amazon wants. Like they allow it. But because I do genuinely believe Amazon wants to empower entrepreneurs and like small businesses. Like I do think they're trying to do that. And they themselves, like I've talked to some of the executives, and like they themselves have trouble sometimes figuring out like where exactly, to like draw the line. So, but I think the arbitrage game, it's a temporary game, right? It takes a lot of hustle, a lot of effort. You're always looking for you're looking for holes in the market, right? Like price discrepancies. It's a great skill to have. I think it's an amazing tool. Like I tell people all the time, like, people think that, oh, you sell on Amazon, you're like I'm not a millionaire. I've sold millions of dollars. I've sold probably, I think I've sold almost $10 million now on Amazon, but I'm not a millionaire. Like my businesses are probably valued at that. So, well, I guess that might technically make me one. But I personally don't have that much. So, like just because you sell a lot doesn't mean you actually have that much. So the decision for like going off of Amazon, really we just went back to like, what's the direction the market is going? Where do I see Amazon in the scheme of retail, right? Like they're the dominant player in online retail. Like Amazon dominates online retail.
Right.
And what does Amazon want for their customers? Because make no mistake, it's their customers, not yours.
Exactly. And I think
Yeah.
that, not to interrupt you, but that plays into the idea of starting to build out like giant social media. Like you guys are probably like have the biggest social media accounts for glue companies, I would assume, right? Or it's got to be like, because Big Glue,
in your niche,
yeah,
definitely.
like Big Glue, they're not doing socials like you guys are.
Big
I bet.
Glue.
Yeah, Big Glue. We're taking down Big Glue.
Yeah, I mean, it's like Elmer's, like
Right.
everybody knows the name Elmer's, but no one has any kind of feeling or emotional attachment to Elmer's. Like my wife was at a random craft shop a few weeks ago, and I thought this was so cool. And like somehow the brand came up, and the lady like smiled at her and asked if she could give her a hug. And I was like, that is the exact response I want people to have with our brand. They're like, they like have a warmth, associated with it. But yeah, it was really just thinking about the direction the market's going. What does Amazon want for its customers, for its platform? Arbitrage is a great way for you to learn flipping, learn business, learn numbers, financial statements, profit and loss, all this stuff, save money so you can invest in other things. So I always tell the arbitrage guys like y'all that are like hustling and grinding, just save as much as you can. And then at some point you may be interested in investing in a new way of selling, and you'll have saved up the money to be able to afford to do it. Because if I had not gone through the hustle grind days, like my family has no money. I got married when I was 18. I've been paying all my own bills since then. I've been married 13 years now, and we were dirt poor for 5 years at least. So it was all hustle and grind and just like saving. So, but it got me to a place where like I was able to invest in something like this, because it was a significant investment. We made zero money from the brand for a year and a half. It was just ideas and work behind the scenes. There was no profit being made. And even now, like we haven't even paid ourselves hardly anything from that brand, because we're saving it all and we're investing it into the brand. We've chosen to hire people instead of give ourselves more money. We hired a marketing assistant. We hired a videographer. We hire more warehouse people. We have a warehouse manager now, like things like that. We choose to add another key person instead of giving ourselves more money, like on the regular basis. And this kind of sacrifices is really what it takes to, maybe not as, I'm not perfect by any means. I don't want to act like I'm not some like symbol of amazing business, but there's going to be sacrifices. So, but yeah, that's like I said, I give long-winded answers, but that's, I really think that what Amazon wants brands. They want brands that connect with a very specific customer. They want brands, they want selection. That's their thing. And there'll always be some kind of a market for arbitrage. And while you're young and hustling and grinding, you can handle it. But, I got to a certain point where I couldn't handle the amount of time I was spending working. I just couldn't do it anymore. And like, I'll get a little personal with you guys. Honestly, the thing for me that like got me to wake up, I was working 100 hours a year or 100 hours a week for probably 6 years. And my dad getting cancer was the thing that it took for me to like slow down and be like, oh, wow, like I've been sacrificing probably too much, to do this. So, balance is so key. It's great to hustle and grind and to save and to try to build your own business, your own thing. But, I just would caution you, like, don't sacrifice too much. And I know that can start to get a little heavy.
No.
We can talk about that more if y'all want, but
I mean, sometimes it just takes stuff like that to kind of wake you up. What is your day-to-day now? What is your daily routine? What sort of work do you do on the daily basis in your business now?
Yeah, so I'm very focused on getting us to the next level in terms of like top line. So we kind of have hit like it's been really rocky with the supply chain difficulties we've been having. So we've been like, especially in our wholesale business, we've launched more products this year, but like our top line revenue has basically stayed the same because some products have lost sales, and then we've got new ones that have kind of replaced it. So I've stepped in several times this year. Well, I guess, well, you asked me about my day-to-day. My day-to-day is honestly not consistent at all. That's the honest answer. I'm super ADHD, and I cannot stand doing the same thing every day. It drives me nuts. And so I have this battle in myself between like, there's certain things you need to do every day, but I also strongly value variety and like switching things up. Like sometimes I'll get up at like 5 in the morning and go and sit at like a coffee shop and work on my laptop or just write or something like that. Some days I'll sleep in until 9 o'clock. We work 10 to 6, so I don't have to get to the office till 10. So I honestly don't have a consistent daily routine. Most of the things I'm doing now is I handle our B2B relations. We have a few dozen retailers that we sell to wholesale. And those are all just like people that have reached out to us that wanted to buy, and we kind of vet them, improve them. We're not pushing into B2B right now. It's because supply is really wonky. So I manage that. I'm the one that is making all the decisions related to like Amazon stuff and making sure that Amazon is good, because seller performance is not something you can mess around with.
Right.
Any types of issues, you got to write POAs, anything like that. Thankfully, I went through all my hell a few years ago, and I kind of learned how to avoid things. So we haven't really had any issues in years, but I'm very vigilant about that stuff. So just
Have
all
y'all
the
created
stuff
all your
related
own
to-
listings? Oh,
Was that?
I was just asking, have y'all created all your own listings, or did you hire out?
So we do it, yeah. So everything related to the backend on Amazon, like the keyword research, product research, ad campaign setup, like I do all of that. I 2 months ago, I did hire a friend of mine who has an ad agency that I trust, and he does our PPC optimization now. We spend probably like between both businesses somewhere around 40,000 a month on Amazon ads. And so like that's a pretty good amount of budget, and I can manage it myself. Like he kind of trained me through just lots of conversations, and I'm pretty good at it, but I just don't like doing it. So I decided to pay him for that. So I just monitor the KPIs. And one of the next biggest things working on is like a lead gen workflow for our team, because it's been too reliant on me historically to make those decisions. So one of the biggest things I'm working on now is like a system for that to offload to our team so they can make some more of those decisions. But the honest answer is my day-to-day is pretty random.
That's awesome. I think a lot of people definitely envy that. And I'm also the same way. I like to have new things kind of going on every day or every other day. Just kind of keeps it exciting.
Mm-hmm.
Keeps it from getting, I think people are calling it burnout now. Keeps from that happening.
Everybody's different, and I don't want anyone to feel like because I'm a certain way they need to be that way. Like some people thrive with routine.
Yeah.
I would be one of them.
Yeah. I honestly don't. Like it feels restricting and uncomfortable. Like I'm not good. I'm not about it.
That's awesome.
So what else do you guys want to know? You got good questions. I like it.
I have one in the back of my mind. Because I saw on your Twitter you had Jesus in the like kind of the first thing. That's a serious question, Garrett.
Yeah, he's right there too.
So how much has faith and religion kind of played a part in this whole journey, like from college to now, like through like ups and downs and stuff?
Yeah. Good question.
Or just having a support system for.
Well, gee.
Yeah. No, honestly, I'm not afraid. I love talking about this stuff. In college, I was vice president of a group called Ratio Christi, which is like a grassroots like Christian apologetics organization, specifically at colleges, something like 700-800 chapters worldwide. So basically what we did is we would go to events at college, and I would set up a board, a whiteboard that just write, and I would just write God exists on one side, God doesn't exist on the other side, and just like talk to people. So I love talking about this stuff. So for me, it's completely foundational. It's totally fundamental to who I am. I've been thinking about my dad the last few days for some reason. I don't know why. He passed away from cancer, I mentioned, about 3 years ago. And he used to call me Matthew the Magnificent, is what he called me. He gave all of me and my siblings all had nicknames. And like the older that I get, the more that like I just really value like how much my parents love me, and like I never ever doubted their love for me. I grew up in a safe environment, and those things are those because of the way my parents loved me and took care of me, because of their faith. Honestly, they strongly believed it was their responsibility to steward their children and to love them and to care for them and to bring them up in integrity and righteousness and all this stuff. Because of the way they love me, like I'm completely comfortable like with myself, and like I have like I just like at a very deep unconscious level, I just trust that God is in control, and I don't worry about like getting hit by a car, or like my wife always worries about me getting hit by a car or something like that when I'm driving. And like I don't think about those things, because it's like if there's a God that is in control of the universe, even if I don't understand a lot of the problems and things in the world, like I don't need to worry about those types of things. Like I'm in his hands, and that's good enough for me. And I have lots of questions, and I love philosophy. I love theology. I love world religions. I like to study different religions too. So I love this whole this is like, I could go off on this forever.
Right.
But it's extremely foundational to who I am. Like I get up in the morning because of my faith. Like my Instagram is faith and entrepreneurship, because those are like my two core values. So yeah, that's really what I'm about, like entrepreneurship and faith.
Awesome.
All right. And I think we'll finish off here. But what are your main tips for, and I probably, based on what we talked about, have a decent idea of what you're going to say, but what are your big tips for someone who's listening to this, who hasn't started yet, and just beginners in general that are looking to either build a successful brand or just, make some money on Amazon? So to beginners specifically, really the thing is just get started. Decide a budget, whatever budget you can afford, that you're not going to need that money in the next few months. If it's $500, $100, like I said, I started with about $600. Just buy some stuff and try to sell it. Nothing like fancy. There's really, that's the best advice for, and Gary Vee says it all the time. I don't know if you guys. Oh yeah. We're huge Gary Vee guys. Yeah. Yeah. So you just literally just buy stuff and sell it. And once you start doing it, right? Like to someone that is in the game, that's doing it for themselves, I can help them so much more than someone that's just in their head thinking about doing it. They want to do it. Like, because as you're doing it, you get different kinds of questions, you get feedback, you just develop an understanding. So, just get started. If you run into problems, man, there's tons of communities, people are willing to help you and to talk. But you got to try to do it for yourself first. Try to figure it out for yourself first, and then ask for some help. Yeah. And that obviously shows that if you're trying stuff, that you have greater aspirations and are willing to even get into it in general. But where can people find you on social media? Yeah. I guess I'm most active on Twitter now, which my Twitter is just MBT Hawk, like Matthew Brian Turner, HAWK. I have an Instagram under Faith and Entrepreneurship, Matthew Turner. Not super active on there, but
one of these days I might be. So feel
Alright,
free.
sounds
Get some
good.
reels
Follow
off.
me
Making
there.
some reels.
Yep. And for all our buy box listeners, if you're ever looking for some craft glue, you guys make sure bearly.art. You guys
Yeah.
take care of us. They got us on the craft glue. So thank you all for listening. And Matthew, a big thank you for you coming on. It's great to get to know you a little bit. I'm excited to, interact with you some more and see how things go these next few years. But thank you guys for listening. We'll talk to you in the next one.